Each week we have an in-depth conversation with one of the key players in the legislative process. This week's guest is Senator Jeremy England. Senator England is a Republican from Vancleave and is chairman of the Senate Elections Committee. Senator England, we welcome you to At Issue.
Thank you, Wilson. Very glad to be here today.
Let's talk about elections and in particular early voting. Senate Bill 2654. Tell us what that bill would do.
Okay, yeah, so this is it's a bill we dropped last year and passed in the Senate 44-8 last year, and I've got it back exactly the same this year. The bill, it gets rid of in-person absentee voting, which is where you can show up 45 days prior to an election at your circuit clerk's office and vote absentee, and it replaces that with 15 days of no excuse in-person early voting. So you would go to your circuit clerk's office, show them your valid photo ID, they will print you a ballot. You fill out your ballot and you put it right into a ballot machine just like you do on Election Day at your precinct. So once that ballot counts, you have the confidence of knowing that it's in there. And another thing I like about it is on election night at 7 o'clock, when the polls close, they can tabulate that machine in the office so you don't have the weight of counting these absentee ballots that are in the envelopes. You get more instant results, which in my opinion really helps the perspective and the integrity of an election when you have your votes counted as quickly to the end of the polling day as possible.
And you said this would fully replace our existing absentee ballot process.
For in-person only. So we would still have mail-in ballots. So we're still, we always keep in mind our military, members of the military that are off-seas, are people who may be living outside of the state temporarily, and even some of our elderly folks that just don't even get out and about. They'll still have that process. So just in-person absentee is what we're getting rid of.
Well, I've heard people say, we already have early voting in Mississippi. I voted absentee. Explain to folks what the difference is between the absentee voting system that we have now and what you are proposing.
Well, so in essence, they're technically correct. They can show up and vote early, in-person absentee, but they have to have a valid excuse to be able to do so, or meet one of the reasons that we require for them to be able to do that.
Which is like, go ahead.
Yeah, one being 65 years of age or older, or being out of town. So if you're going to be out of town on vacation, on Election Day, you can go in and there's an affidavit. So you have to basically swear, have sworn testimony that it's and your signature will be notarized that you meet one of the excuses that you've told the circuit clerk. So by replacing that with in-person early voting, we get rid of the excuse. You can just go in and do it. And look, there's a lot of folks that show up and, maybe wink and nod at their circuit clerk and say, I'm going to be out of town that day. And we don't want people having to do that. We want them to have the convenience to go in and vote at a more convenient time if that works for them.
Why is it necessary to offer an early voting option?
Well, for one, obviously you have some people that cannot get to the precinct on Election Day if they're out of town. Now, I like to tell the story. My wife is just one example that I use. She works at Ingalls Shipbuilding. She's sitting in her desk sometimes at 7 a.m. on Election Day, so she can't go early. Mm-hmm. She gets off at 3:30. She hits traffic, and as soon as she gets in, Tuesdays are always big days for soccer and dance and different things for our children, so she jumps straight into that. And it's very tough for her to find a window to go stand in line and vote in an election. And she wants to vote, just like most Mississippians. I mean, it's a great right that we have, and one of our fundamental traditions as Americans is to be able to have the right to vote and go vote. But it just may not be convenient. The weather might be bad. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, Wilson, I've never been comfortable with the fact that our weather can play a role in who we elect to run these very important offices. And having that early option, you can look at the weather. You can stop by when it's more convenient for you up to those 15 days. Mm-hmm. And if you allow me just for a second, the 15 days is not really a true 15 days. We don't vote on Sundays still in Mississippi. And those Saturdays, we only require the circuit clerk's office to be open until noon, which is just like they are now for those final 2 Saturdays prior to the election for in-person absentee.
There are a number of other states that offer early voting. Was this bill based on any state in particular and how they already do it?
So there are 47 other states that do this. So we're really on the tail end of only being one of 3 that don't have any sort of early voting now. But this is a very a very limited version of what you see in other states. We're not having ballot harvesting. We banned that last year. We don't have drop boxes. We're not expanding mail-in. We're not having multiple locations. I mean, this is a very, very narrow way to allow people to have the right to go vote early. And we'll look at that. I've heard from some circuit clerks that say, hey, we would like to maybe offer this at a different location, either on site or another government building. But for right now, focusing on the security and the integrity of the whole system, we're just focusing on allowing folks to show up at their circuit clerk's office for now.
Let's move on to Senate Bill 2650 regarding finance transparency with regard to elections and campaigns. This would create a database, essentially, that anybody could search to see who's donating to whom, right? That's
right. Yeah, and Secretary of State Michael Watson, he's already on this, so he's already got an RFP out to build a database that would allow online filing of your campaign finance reports. And what we would eventually like to do, Wilson, is have that all the way from the municipal level all the way on up. But I had a tough time getting this out of committee the other day because a few of my senators, and they're not incorrect, they reminded me and discussed how in some of these more rural areas or in areas where you may have somebody that's not as tech savvy, this is going to be an issue for them, and we don't really want to limit them from doing it. But
now,
of course,
are you talking about the candidates or the voters?
Talking about the candidates filing them, and of course the side. The other side to that argument that I've heard is, well, if they can't operate just filling out a simple online form, do they need to be running our cities and our counties? Mm-hmm. But I think what we'll see next week, we'll see some amendments in this bill, but we'll see at least a database set up to allow the Secretary of State to do that and to start allowing the option for us to do that while other things are still put online, because transparency is key. It's important to Lieutenant Governor, it's important to the Secretary, and that's what we want to see happen.
Why do you think it's important for people to know who is donating to whom?
Well, because that's a fundamental. That goes right to the candidate. Sometimes the voters should be able to look up my name on this database, see who's donating to me, where my checks are coming from, and they should also be able to see where I'm spending that money. What am I focusing on? More transparency in that, more sunlight in that, it's going to lead to better candidates because it's going to lead to more accountability, the ability to hold us accountable for what we do and who we're allowing to donate to our campaigns and who's supporting us.
Let's talk about something that has nothing to do with elections, and that is a bill that I'm curious about that you and Senator Walter Michel have been working on involving alcohol and delivery of wine. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we have a bill that passed committee this year. It passed the Finance Committee. It would allow for the direct shipment of wine to Mississippi residents. It's something that Senator Walter Michel's worked on for a very long time. I've been interested in it. In the House, you have Representative Shonda Yates and Representative Brent Powell, who have been champions of this issue. And it's just time for Mississippians to be able to go to these nice places like the Napa Valley and the Oregon area, the Pacific Northwest, or North Carolina and the Asheville area, and taste these wines and attend these wine tastings and be able to have these wines shipped directly back to us in Mississippi, which we currently can't do. I mentioned 47 other states have early voting earlier. 47 other states have the ability to direct ship wine to consumers. So we want to come online with that. We want to start offering that to Mississippians and allow them that privilege.
What about the local liquor store owners that are currently selling wine? Surely not all of them would be in favor of this.
That's right. And some of them are worried. And look, in Mississippi, any kind of change is always going to be really tough.
Well, especially when it has to do with alcohol.
That's absolutely right. But the package store owners, what I think they need to understand is the wines that they offer in their stores, for the most part, aren't the wines that are going to be shipped to these consumers. The fact that the shipping itself is expensive and limited to numbers of cases, you're not going to get your $15, $20, $30 bottles of wine that most of us now see and probably get most of the time. We're not going to ship those. It's just going to be cost prohibitive. These are very specialized wines, and a lot of them are expensive on their own. And you're going to get them from places that maybe don't even offer their products. Their sales model doesn't even offer products through packaged stores. These clean wines, organic wines that remove a bunch of the sulfates out of, they only do direct ship. And so we're currently not even able to get those in Mississippi. So yes, package store owners are concerned, but I think at the end of the day, look, I had somebody tell it to me this way this past week. When we're allowing Mississippians to go out and get these fancier wines, these more expensive wines that we don't offer here in Mississippi, their wine palate is going to change. They're going to go back to their liquor store, and instead of buying that $8 bottle of wine, they're going to buy that $15 or $20 bottle of wine because they've got the, they've got the more sophisticated impression of wine at that time. So I think it's going to be helpful, more helpful than maybe what they know now.
Do you think this bill has a good chance of passing?
I think it does. We passed it out of committee. I think we'll see some amendments from the floor, and we'll see it go to conference. We'll see it tightened up a little bit from where it is now. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is that whatever we pass, that direct ship is an option, that we don't make it so difficult on the shippers and on the consumers and on the manufacturers to where we pass a law and say we allow it just to say we allow it. We want to make sure that this is something we're able to offer to consumers in Mississippi.
What else are you hoping to achieve this session?
Yeah, so it's a very good very busy session. Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker. So I first was sworn in for the first time in 2020. Mm-hmm. We've been, they've had their foot on the gas since then. It's been very, very busy sessions. One thing that I would like to see that I've been working on the last few years is an anti-doxing bill for law enforcement. It would allow them to go to their tax office or whoever holds their tax rolls and fill out a form and ask that their personalized information be removed from online. It would still be available. You would have to go file your request for it. But what it's aimed to do is to keep any bad actors from being able to get a law enforcement or an officer or a judge or a prosecutor, get their information and then put it out on the internet, which is what we know as doxing. That's the term doxing. And we see it a lot of times in officer-involved shootings even if somebody thinks they got pulled over and they shouldn't have got pulled over, they'll get that officer's information and put it out there with the intent of having people harass that officer or know where they live. And it's something that we can offer that would easily allow this information to come offline and offer a little more protection for the identity and personal information of our law enforcement officers.
Senator Jeremy England will be watching all of these issues as your work continues with others there at the state capitol. Thank you for joining us on At Issue.
Wilson, thank you.